Tonight's big stories. Charter change is back in the spotlight. And has Congress started its campaign to amend the Constitution? That's what we will be asking Albay Representative Edsa Lagman on the show.
A Pulse Asia survey shows that over 70% of Filipinos disapprove of the Marcos administration's strategy to counter inflation. But the trust and approval ratings of the country's top officials still saw modest increases by the end of 2023.
And it seems like Hollywood was not all too impressed with Filipino-American comedian Jokoy's hosting of the 2024 Golden Globes. We'll be discussing that further later on.
Welcome to the show. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Danny Laurel.
And I'm Sean Yao.
It is the second week of the year. It is back to reality as we'd have it. And we've been talking about this since 2023. Now, after the holidays, eto na nga, balik na po tayo sa usapan ng charter change. Remember, we had House Speaker Martin Romualdez announcing before the holiday break that they plan to study amendments to the 1987 charter, specifically on economic provisions. And now, there are reports of Chacha making progress at the grassroots level, with local officials supposedly spearheading campaigns. Albay municipal mayors, for one, have started discussions on a people's initiative as the method of amending the Constitution. A copy of the petition supposedly being handed out states amendments which would allow Congress to vote jointly regarding changes to the Constitution. Now, this is an important provision to take note of since voting jointly means the lower house would easily outvote the Senate. Albay Representative Edsa Lagman also flagged alleged payouts for signatures to this petition.
Doon sa meeting na yon, nabigay ng 50% ng 100 pesos per voter. Ang sabi, susunod yung balance na 50%. Kaya yung mga alkalde ay nakatanggap ng partial para doon sa pambayad sa mga pipirma sa petisyon. Sa isang alkalde, 125,000 yung 50%. Yung sa iba mas malaki at yung iba naman ay, for example, yung meron isa 142,500. Ito ay 50% ng 100 pesos per voter. Kasi ang tinatarget lang naman ay 3% of the registered voters.
Now, one of the mayors who was present in that meeting was Legazpi Mayor Pido Garbin Jr. He said that he was there to give insights as a former House Committee chairman on constitutional amendments. Garbin also outrightly denied that constituents are being paid for their signatures. He added that Albay mayors are acting on their own initiative and are not being influenced by anyone in the lower house.
Allegations on flow of funds or money, that's a wild and baseless accusation. Totoo nga, nagkaroon ng meeting yung League of Municipalities na was invited to conduct a lecture with regard doon on how to, proceed with the People's Initiative. Based on information gathered from the ground na pinapaintindi muna yung pinipirmahan. And bago maintindihan ng registered voter, saka lang pumipirma.
So what exactly is People's Initiative? Well, that requires a petition signed by at least 12% of total registered voters, where each legislative district must be represented by at least 3% of its registered voters, and general voting public then heads to a referendum. The People's Initiative is described as the power of the people that is provided for by the 1987 Constitution, and its process is laid down in the Republic Act 6735 or the Initiative and Referendum Act. Now, according to this Republic Act 6735, the public can propose constitutional amendments through a People's Initiative by lodging a petition signed by at least 12% of the total number of registered voters. Meanwhile, Senator Amy Marcos has since been vocal against Chacha. Ang kulit daw kasi ng mga pasimuno nito. In a statement, Senator Amy denounced the alleged bribery happening in the LGUs.
Right, let's talk about the supposed signature campaign that's happening on the ground with Albay 1st District Representative Edsa Lagman. Congressman, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear very well.
Okay, I'm not sure if you were around when we played your soundbite. You were saying na 50% ng 100 pesos na payout na, yung mga local chief executives na bigyan ng 125,000 or so. What can you tell us about this? Have you ascertained where that money came from?
Well, definitely there was a meeting as admitted by Pido Garbin, who incidentally is not the mayor of Legazpi City, but a former congressman representing a Bicol party list. And
Thank you for the
he said
correction.
that there was a meeting of the municipal mayors of the province of Albay, which was called by the League of Municipal Mayors. And during that meeting, where a previous agenda was not disclosed, it was mentioned that there is now a people's initiative to amend the Constitution with respect to the voting requirements in the Constituent Assembly.
Right, but
And
Kong,
the municipal mayors were given the forms to be signed by the petitioner voters, and also the amount representing 50% of the 100 pesos per voter per the ones who would sign the petition. The amounts vary because the targeted number of voters would also vary depending on the requisite percentage of 3% of the total registered voters of a legislative district. For example, one municipal mayor got 125,000, another got 142,000, and another 175,000. All of these mayors already returned the amounts because if the purpose of a people's initiative is noble and patriotic, we should not buy the people's will.
okay, but
I think the
Kong,
House of Representatives is putting its wrong foot forward early in the year because this is not anymore a people's initiative. It is a congressional initiative. And
that's exactly what we wanted to
would
clarify.
not-
Kong
Beg your
Edsel,
pardon?
galing po ba yung initiative sa Congress or sila-sila lang yung nag-take ng initiative? And if-
Hindi nag-take ng initiative yung mga tao. Sila ay inudyukan ng mga galing sa Kongreso na mag-People's Initiative. Kaya binigyan sila ng pera para ibigay dun sa mga magpipirma sa petisyon. Ang alam ko, merong mga ibang lugar na mas mataas pa ang binibigay, and I will have to validate this report. I have not validated the report.
Congressman, meron po ba tayong proof? Do we have evidence of the payouts?
Definitely. The proof is, one, yung mga alkalde tumanggap. Two, na ibalik yung pera. Three, yung forms na pinagbigay. At four, yung dokumento na nakasaad doon kung ano yung natanggap nilang pera.
Pero may pruweba po kung na galing itong idea na ito or yung pag-uudyok ay galing po sa Kamara.
Hindi ko sinasabing galing sa Kamara. Ang sinasabi ko lang, ang nagpapalakad dito, mga congressmen galing sa supermajority. Doon sa Albay, ang nakikita natin ay yung mga presente during the meeting were officials of the Bicol party list, which is based in Albay.
Okay.
One of those present was Pido Garbin, a former congressman representing the Bicol, and the incumbent congressman Hil Bongalon, of also party list, and Bicol, and the venue was the Ellis Hotel, reputedly owned by one of the representatives of Bicol.
Rep, what exactly are they touting in this form of the charter change? Because you have Speaker Romualdez saying before the holiday break, it's specifically on economic provisions naman daw. So is this the form of government that they're trying to change, the extension of the terms, or again, economic provisions? The one of PBBM, he said he was just looking at foreign ownership. So marami namang elements po yung charter change.
Yes, okay.
Ano ba yung nilalaban nila dito?
Well, unang-una, I think this is a two-phase campaign. Ang unang kampanya is through People's Initiative para palitan yung voting sa Constituent Assembly. Yung Constituent Assembly is the composition of the senators and congressmen into a constitutional body to propose amendments to the Constitution. Ngayon, malabo kung ito ba ay joint voting or separate voting per chamber. Ang ginawa dito sa People's Initiative na ginagawa ngayon ay klinaro yung voting requirement. It should be joint voting by congressmen and senators. Pag ito ay nangyari, ma-overwhelm yung smaller number of senators of 24 members by the yung more numerous members na umaabot sa 315 members ng mababang kapulungan. Ito ang unang phase. Hindi pa sinasabi yung second phase kung ano ang mga substantial amendments. Posible na doon papasok yung economic amendments at yung extension of term limits.
Understood.
Okay. Have you seen the form, Congressman? And
Yes, definitely. I've seen the form. And we have given to media the form. And nakalagay doon amendments or revision, yung Article 17. Article 17. Nakalagay dito, Section 1. Any amendment to or revision of this Constitution may be proposed by 1. The Congress upon a vote of 3/4 of all its members, ito ng amendment, voting jointly at the call of the Senate President or the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Iyan lang ang amendment. Changing the voting
Congressman,
to a clarified joint voting.
how far and how deep have discussions gone on the ground with people, from municipal mayors to the people, and how are they planning to convince the people to sign in on this, to discuss that? Because these are very legal terms that we're discussing. It's about the Constitution. Kumbaga, paano nila maipapaliwanag, maipapahayag, at gaano kalawak na po yung diskusyon?
Nakapagtataka, ang balita doon sa isang munisipyo sa Albay ay tapos na yung pagpirma ng petisyon. At hindi ko maintindihan kung alam ng tao kung ano ang pinirma nila o alam ng nagpapapirma kung ano ang pinapapirma nila. Sapagkat isa sa mga alkalde nagsabi na siya ay isang ayon sa People's Initiative sapagkat ma-extend yung sa kanyang term as alkalde. So in other words, merong disinformation agad na nangyari doon sa baba.
Pero kung pwede ba yun na mauna yung, kumbaga, yung pagkakalap ng mga pirma before even mag-announce yung House of Representatives, kung ano ba talaga yung plano? Having said that, may napag-uusapan na ba within the House of Representatives on how you're going to conduct this? Has there been, kumbaga, instructions or directives from the House leadership as early as now?
Walang pinag-uusapan sapagkat bakasyon ngayon ang mababang kapulungan at ang Kongreso. At ang balita ko, marami ng mga congressmen galing sa iba't ibang partido na nakatanggap na ng forms for distribution.
Hindi po ba meron na po tayong jurisprudence regarding the first question of Sean? Pwede ba yun na magpipirmahan before this is even explained to the people? Because back in 2006, there was a signature campaign denied petitioning a unicameral parliamentary system of government, denied by the Supreme Court, saying that this was not really directly proposed by the people dahil meron ng draft of the proposed amendment before signatures were gathered. So I think that is what is happening right now. Am I right, Congressman? And is that allowed?
That is correct. That is in the case of Lambino versus Comelec, na yung People's Initiative noon ay binaliwala ng Kongreso sapagkat maraming fatal defects. Isa na yon na handa na yung pinapapirmang petisyon, hindi galing sa tao mismo, pero doon sa mga umuudyok na mag-people's initiative para maamenda ang konstitusyon.
What is the legal way of proceeding with it, knowing this?
To add
I
lang to
think
Gretchen,
first,
though, ako, before you answer, at saka, paano papasok yung COMELEC dito? Can you report it to the COMELEC? Is this against the rules, against COMELEC rules? How does it all, work out?
Well, the COMELEC will always be involved because the registration of the petition will be with the COMELEC. The validation whether the petition is in order or the signatures are true and or not falsified will also be by the COMELEC. So the COMELEC will be involved in this. But I think the proper way is first the Congress would have to meet, the leadership of the House should meet the members of the House so that they could explain what they intend to do, whether they are going to push through the amendments by people's initiative first or subsequently by a constituent assembly. This has not been discussed in the House of Representatives. But they are now going on in the signature campaign, which is preempting a previous discussion on the merits and issues of a signature campaign.
All right, Kong, siguro we'll need to check back in with you once you guys reconvene after the holiday break. But for tonight, thank you so much for your time. Albay Congressman Ed Lagman. Again, we would like to make a correction. Alfredo Pido Garbin Jr. is a former Ako Bicol party list representative and not the incumbent mayor of Legazpi City in Albay.
And pausing for a short break. Right after that, how are top government officials performing lately? We will run through the latest survey from Pulse Asia when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News. Now, President Marcos and Vice President Sara Duterte saw small increases in their trust and approval ratings in the month of December after suffering double-digit drops in September. A poll conducted by Pulse Asia shows that President Marcos' trust ratings climbed by 2 percentage points to 73% in December. That's a rather small recovery from the 14-point decline in September that led to a trust rating of 71% that month. The president, though, continues to enjoy majority approval with 68%, up by 3 points from the 65% that he got in September. And as for Vice President Sara Duterte, her trust ratings also saw a slight increase. That's 3 points to 78%, coming from 75% in September, which was a result of a 12-point slump. The Vice President's approval ratings, meanwhile, increased by 1 point to 74% in December. There was also no significant change in the trust and approval ratings of Senate President Mig Zubiri. His trust rating saw a modest increase of 2 points to 51% in December, while his approval ratings decreased by a point to 49%. And unlike the President, the Vice President, and the Senate President, House Speaker Martin Romualdez failed to get the trust and approval of the majority, with both his ratings falling below 50%. His trust rating saw an increase of 2 points to 40%, while his approval ratings went down by 2 points to 41%. So, to what can we attribute the low increases in the ratings of the nation's top officials? Well, according to that same survey, at least 73% of Filipinos disapprove of the government's response to inflation. Other top concerns of Filipinos are likewise economic in nature, such as issues in increasing the pay of workers, creating more jobs, and reducing poverty.
Let's dig deeper into the data we have with us on the show. Pulse Asia Research President Ronald Holmes. Good evening, Ronald.
Good evening. Good evening to all of you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We
Hope
have
it's
new
happy.
figures for the new year. Comparing to the third quarter of 2023, we had double-digit decreases back then, and now we have slight increases of single-digit. What exactly happened here? Is it mainly economic in nature, given that we had the holidays and we had a lot to think about money-wise? What changed exactly?
Actually, just to clarify, Gretchen, there's not much of a change. If you apply the margin of error from survey to survey, then it will be within the margin of error with regard to the ratings of the top national officials. The change should be more than 6 points. In this case, it's less than 6 points, so we say that it's essentially unchanged from September.
Any changes based on demographic, based on social class that are notable?
Well, Danny, there are changes that we noted in the regional areas, specifically in the Visayas. You have borderline changes in terms of the approval of the Vice President. It declined by 12 points. I say borderline because it's almost close to being significant statistically. There's a significant increase in the disapproval of the House Speaker in the Visayas, and a borderline increase in terms of disapproval of the President also in the Visayas. So it seems that the Visayans are the most sensitive to whatever had happened, perhaps in the last quarter, with regard to the performance ratings of the President, the Vice President, and the House Speaker.
Other age groups, sir, or social classes, meron bang difference or similar lang as the past survey?
Ang pagkakaalala ko, wala sa age groups and in the socioeconomic classes. It's largely in the sub-regional areas, more specifically in the Visayas. You do have marginal changes in other areas, but it's really in the Visayas that we saw a decline in the approval of Vice President, an increase in the disapproval of both the President and the House Speaker.
Right, pero yung kay House Speaker, no, Ronald, medyo below 50%. It's been a while since I believe I saw that come out of Pulse Asia. Did that shock you in any way? And what do the numbers tell you? What affected his ratings in both approval and trust?
Well, it's not so surprising, Sean, because what we do see with regard to the House Speaker, except for some periods in the past, for example, I remember the only one who had majority approval rating among the previous House Speakers was Sonny Belmonte. In one reading that we had when he was House Speaker, and Alan Peter Cayetano. And largely, in the case of Alan Peter Cayetano, he was coming from the Senate, nationally prominent, and took on the speakership. So most House Speakers really don't have that much a majority approval. There's basically you have the same proportion of Filipinos who are undecided with regard to the House Speaker. Because remember, the members of the House represent districts. They don't represent a national constituency. People might not be familiar with who they are, despite the fact that they hold the fourth highest position.
Right, but apparently Filipinos are very much familiar with inflation and, of course, its effects. Still, the top concern with 72% of Filipinos still not in favor of how this administration is handling inflation. Ronald, sometimes it's shocking because you wouldn't think, no, an ordinary person would even know kung ano ba yung inflation and what gives. What do the numbers tell us with regard to inflation and economic concerns of Filipinos across all social classes?
Although the question that we have here basically is translated in Filipino. Gaano kayo nag-a-approve ba sa pagganap ng tungkulin para tugunan yung pagtaas ng presyo, mataas na presyo ng mga bilihin. So, and it basically shows that people are still concerned with regard to high prices, despite the fact that you've had headline and core inflation essentially declining in the past quarter. The prices remain high, and people are not satisfied, are not approving of the initiatives or steps taken by the administration in terms of addressing this problem, which is a perennial problem mentioned across all of our surveys in the last almost 30 years. No? So it's always been there. It's the number one problem. This is the first time, however, that we see a significant majority of Filipinos disapproving of the national administration's performance in addressing inflation. We've had majorities in the past disapproving, but this is 73%. So it's rather high relative to the surveys that we conducted previously.
How can you explain the discrepancy between that being so high and yet the approval ratings of the president and the VP at least slightly, albeit statistically and significantly going up?
Yeah, maybe there's a separation between holding administration accountable and they're willing to give some more time for the individuals or the personalities to address this problem. Maybe people are aware that the administration might not be necessarily working in tandem with regard to collaborating with regard to addressing this problem. But with respect to personalities, there might be a tendency of people to be more tolerant. And if they see that these people are not in any way embroiled in issues of personal integrity, they're willing to provide higher trust ratings, or if they see that they're actually doing their jobs or might be performing in a way that they express that they're doing their jobs, then that's how basically lenient or liberal the assessment might be of a number of Filipinos.
Ronald, what exactly happened in this period that you conducted the survey, notable events during that time period? And did the president already let go of the Department of Agriculture position in this survey?
I think he did. I think towards the closer to the survey period, he already had decided to give up the position. There were certain events that transpired then, prior to the survey. Of course, the primary event then was that, the tension in the West Philippine Sea, the war in Gaza, those are the primary events, the bombing at the MSU, and the release of on bail of former Senator Laila de Lima, if I recall some of the things that had transpired prior to the survey.
Right. Before we let you go, one quick question. We know that the worst quarter, I think, for all their approval and trust ratings was the third quarter last year. The September results were double-digit drops. Was that the end of the honeymoon period? Was that normal? And mababawi pa ba yun? Or wala
Or
na?
dahil ba sa confidential funds, yung usapan na yun?
Yun din yung big reason nung third quarter. Having said that, is there a way to make up for the lost numbers, or is it a foregone thing?
It's hard to predict. Initially you had discussions on charter change and how would this digression from attending to major concerns be taken by many Filipinos. If government is not able to focus on the primary concerns, which are now generating less than majority approval and significant disapproval, then it's not just the national administration that may be held accountable or answerable for those failures. It might even be the president. No? The vice president, to a certain extent, is insulated. We've had vice presidents in the past who have had higher performance ratings of the president. Unless, of course, there's a dispute between the president and vice president. Those are the things that might be forthcoming, may not also happen, but those are things that can probably change for the better or for worse the performance or trust ratings of the top two officials.
Oh. Susunod na na survey abangan namin na yung for 2025 senatorial elections.
Malapit-lapit na yon. Let's see.
Trend na ba? By that
Statistically
time?
malapit na, Ronald.
Tingnan natin.
Yeah, well, we know that our electoral cycle is too short, and it basically, what happens is that when they get into the position, they're already prepared for the next elections.
Well, we do have a year ahead of us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay. Thank
Tonight.
you. Good evening.
Pulse Asia Research President Ronald Holmes.
Unforgivable. That is how PNP Chief Benjamin Acorda described disinformation that he and Armed Forces of the Philippines Chief Romeo Browner are involved in a supposed destabilization plot against the president. Acorda has now filed a case against a certain Johnny Macana Sr., who is supposedly behind the vlog, which claimed that Acorda and Browner are the ones convincing President Marcos to resign from his position. Acorda stressed that the information is untrue and that the vlogger only wanted his 15 minutes of fame. The charges filed by Acorda against the vlogger is in the violation of the cybercrime law. Acorda maintains there is no destabilization effort against the president.
It hurts me that there are people na gusto lang maging sikat yung kanilang blog ay gagawa ng mga disinformation. No less than my face, the face of the Chief of Staff posted on viral and saying the AFP and the PNP withdrawing support or asking resignation of the President, it's unforgivable. Hindi po tama yon.
Up next, a senior Vatican official says the Roman Catholic Church should seriously think about allowing priests to marry. When we return, we'll discuss that with Father Ordize Jesus Siva of the Compania de los Padres de Familia. Keep it here on One News.
You're still watching the big story here on One News.
A senior Vatican official and advisor to Pope Francis has called on the Roman Catholic Church to seriously think about allowing priests to marry. In an interview with Times of Malta, Archbishop Charles Cicluna of Malta, who is also adjunct secretary in the Vatican's doctrinal office, said that the time is ripe to, quote, discuss the issue seriously and take decisions on it. Cicluna recognized that celibacy remains a part of the church and will continue, but emphasized that priests should have the choice to marry, similar to the practice in Oriental Catholic churches. In 2019, the Vatican came close to altering the rule when the Synod of Bishops voted decisively in favor of permitting married men in the Amazon region to enter the priesthood. The ultimate authority for rule changes within the church, however, rests with Pope Francis, and in this case, he chose not to proceed with the proposed change.
Let's delve deeper into this matter. We have with us Father Jess Siva. He's the Secretary General of the Compania de los Padres de Familia. Good evening, Father Siva, and welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening. Since we are already in the area of religion, I would like to greet the Three Marys a pleasant evening.
Tres
Magandang-
Marias,
magandang-
thank you. Magandang evening po, Sir Father. Oo nga pala. Father, no, before we delve into the issue over in Rome, let's talk first about your personal situation. As we understand, you're an ordained priest. You were ordained in 86 rather. But you have been living with your partner for 12 years. Give us an idea of how that works, especially are you still able to be part of the priesthood? Are you still able to serve in the same way now that you are living with your partner?
So I was ordained in December 29, 1986. I just had my anniversary just this December 29. And then I solemnized the marriage of Father Hector May 31, 1998. That was 12 years after I was ordained. But still we continue until now. So this is already our 25th journey to the married priesthood. 25th year journey to the married priesthood.
But
So yun, we are still exercising our ministry. What the celibate priests are doing, we are doing it also.
Okay, Father
Although it is in our
Siva,
own personal way.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
be very frank. This is completely new to me. I was reading some background notes
Yes.
on you, and I'm like, is he still a priest? Did he get kicked out? Can
how
you
does
explain
that
to us
work?
how this works?
You're a
And-
priest forever, according to the priestly order of Melchizedek. Once you are validly ordained, your ordination never becomes invalid. So what is lost is only our clerical state, but still we remain as priests. So meaning to say that when we are clerics, we are connected to the archdiocese, we are connected to the parishes. But since we had that infamous act last 25 years ago, when I solemnized the marriage of Father Hector, we were defrocked by the church. But anyway, to tell you, I made an appeal to the Holy Father, and I received the official receipt that he received by letter of appeal in the year 2017. That was, I think, April 24 of 2017. And according to the Code of Canon Law, according to my own personal opinion, Canon 1353 tells us that once the priest or whoever had committed offense, made an appeal, the appeal has a suspensive effect, whatever is the declaration to him. So that's why I still continue my priesthood, I still continue my priestly ministry here in Iloilo, together with my fellow priest here.
Father,
Okay.
ano po ibig sabihin ng suspensive effect? And also,
So yung mga declaration na halimbawa, I was dismissed from the priesthood or suspended, wala na yung effect, suspended. Kasi nag-appeal ako kahit walang decision pa. So the appeal in itself, that is Canon 1353. That is on my own personal interpretation. Kasi di ba yung basihan ng ano namin is the canon law.
yes
So
po.
that's why yung appeal ko, whatever is the declaration before is already suspended because of that appeal.
Okay, until lumabas yung results ng appeal, kumbaga, Father.
Whatever is the result, basta the appeal in itself, that is based on Canon 1353. Although I'm not a canon lawyer, pero nagbabasa din tayo ng canon law. Oo.
Father,
So that's why I
has,
continue my priestly service.
has Pope
Okay.
Francis decided on this already? Because we read in the news that the authority rests with him, and in this case, he chose not to proceed with the proposed change. Has he decided, and is that final?
But what is important is that he received my appeal when I was defrocked, when I was dismissed by the church.
okay.
So that appeal maybe has an effect already. And anyway, I read also in the March 2023 interview of the Pope Francis, no, by an Argentinian website, Infobay. according to him, celibacy is just a temporary prescription. It's not an eternal, like a priestly ordination. So celibacy is just a discipline. And according to him, it can be revised. So there is already a hint from him that he is open to the married priesthood.
Father,
Pero
what-
Father,
Okay.
Father, I think Gretchen was referring to itong kay Archbishop Cicluna, no? Itong call
Okay.
ni
That's why it was reiterated by Archbishop Cicluna, Charles Cicluna of the Archdiocese of Malta. And I know once the Archbishop speaks or the Bishop speaks, they already the statement, their declaration has a weight. So when he spoke of that allowing priests to marry, it's already something. It's already something. That's why he's one of the advisor or consultant of Pope Francis, and he belongs to the office of the doctrinal matters in the Vatican. So his declaration has already a weight, even though it's still an opinion from him, coming from him.
Father, what
So there is a possibility that after maybe on the synod and synodality, this issue will be tackled
What are the thoughts
with regard
po
to
of
married priesthood.
What are the thoughts of your constituents, of the people you serve around you, of the parish that you belong to, on your status po as a priest?
They are already
that
accepting us since then, 25 years ago.
Okay.
We perform baptism, we perform Holy Eucharist, we celebrate the Holy Eucharist every Sunday. Everything, every practices that the celibate priests are doing, we are doing it.
What
And they are
about your
accepting us
co-priests?
already.
Father, sabi mo,
Yes.
marami po kayo
Oo nga
nakasal
Your
na pare.
meron po ba kayong group? Is it beyond
Dito
you?
sa Iloilo, 3 kaming active.
Nakasal
3
po.
kami.
Oo.
Na
Partner.
may advocacy to allow married priesthood. No, we still continue even though the Archdiocese does not permit us, but it is in our own way. But anyway, medyo naano na sila sa amin, nasanay na. Kaya nga parang wala na rin. It's just, I think parang pinahinayaan na lang kami magmimisa.
Father, clarify ko lang, no? Kasal po kayo ng partner ninyo?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Kasi-
Okay. So yung tatlong
not
priest
yet.
na kasama po ninyo, they're
That's
also
why
partners.
that's why we need the fiducia supplicans.
So I'm still waiting also for the results.
The blessing.
Kung hindi po mangyari
the
yun,
blessing.
The
Kung
blessing.
The blessing,
mangyari yun,
because we are
Father.
also marginalized. The married priests are also marginalized, together with the separated ones, the divorced people, the LGBTQ, and we are one of
Okay,
them.
alright.
And as far as you know, Father Jess, hindi lang, apart
Yes.
from you and yung mga kasama nyo dyan sa Iloilo, marami pong nasa ganitong situation, which is why Charles Cicluna brought it up to begin with.
Yeah. You know,
nilang
Ma'am Sean, Ma'am
Yes.
Sean, we had our convention here in Rio last April of 2023, the National Convention of the Married Priests. Pero sila, nagmimisa na sa bahay nila, but ours, we serve the community. Lumalabas kami, at saka maraming nag-request sa amin na magmimisa sa kanila for those who could not avail the services of the celibate priest.
Okay. So to you,
Oo.
sir, it's not an option po to leave the priesthood and get married if hindi po to ma-approve by the Pope.
Kung hindi ma-approve, that depends on the Holy Spirit. That's why we are praying that the Synod and Synodality would tackle that issue this coming October 2024, ma'am.
Okay. Father, yung celibacy for priests, is that in the Bible? Is that dogma?
That's why, according to Pope Francis, it's just a discipline. It is just a discipline. It is not eternal like priestly ordination. So it could be changed. That's why the Pope is open to it.
All right.
It
Maraming
could be
salamat
revised.
po.
So kaya nga, nakasalalay yan sa binding and losing power of Peter. If the successor of Peter is the Pope and Pope Francis is now the successor of Peter, depende yan sa kanya. Kasi sabi niya ba, binigyan siya ng yabi ng langit ni Jesus. Ang sabi, yung susi pala, yung yabi, susi.
Si St. Peter, my
Binigyan siya.
mother-in-law.
Sabi ni Jesus kay Peter,
Iba na nga yung
Kung ano, yung whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you lose on earth will be loosened in heaven.
as
Parang
well.
ganun.
Abangan
the
natin
loosening
yung
and binding
mangyayari
power
sa
of
Abangan
Peter.
po namin, but very interesting po. Thank you very much for enlightening
Okay.
us there.
Thank you
on
very
your
much
quest.
also, Sri Marys, for giving me a chance to be on your national program.
Sige po. That was, of course, Father Jess Siva, Secretary General of the Compania de los Padres de Familia. Maraming salamat, Father.
Oh.
Iligtas mo kami sa kasalanan.
Meantime, the devotees continue to flock to the Quirino Grandstand for the traditional kissing of the Black Nazarene. And this comes just a day before the actual feast and the highly anticipated Traslacion. Let's get some updates on that. We have with us Mon Gualvez reporting to us from the Quirino Grandstand. Mon, kamusta ang mga deboto dyan?
That's right, Danny. In fact, grabe pa rin yung dami ng tao dito sa Quirino Grandstand. And all the people here, actually, all the devotees here feel the excitement of the resumption of the activities in celebration of the Feast of the Black Nazarene, from the actual kissing, from the masses at the grandstand, up to the actual procession.
Thank you po, Nazareno. Kami Nazareno. Nazareno. Thank you po.
This was what Nanay Annalisa repeatedly mentioned while guiding her 16-year-old child towards the image of the Black Nazarene at Quirino Grandstand. Her child had fallen ill with meningitis at the age of 3. This illness has left her child struggling to walk and unable to speak until now. As part of Annalisa's vow, she brings her child every year to personally kiss the image as an act of devotion.
Tuloy-tuloy pa rin po ang pananampalataya namin sa Nazareno po para sa kagalingan niya po.
Annalisa was just one of many who withstood the scorching heat and patiently lined up to reach the image of the Black Nazarene for the traditional kissing. Those early in the line were given flowers from the image itself. Even the plastic used to wrap the image was shared among the devotees. One of those who received the share was Emily, a Quiapo Church volunteer. Emily has been a devotee of the Black Nazarene since being diagnosed with an autoimmune disease in 2015.
Sobrang pasasalamat dahil gano'n mo po, hindi ko kailangan uminom ng gamot. Di ba po? Oral chemo, hindi mo kailangan uminom.
With the return of the Traslacion or the procession of the Black Nazarene, devotees have begun to set up camp in the open field. They each laid out their fabric and tents, bringing along their packed meals. K9 units have been constantly patrolling and ensuring security around the area. Maynilad also continues to provide free water for the devotees. The carriage that will be used in this year's Traslacion is now also positioned at the bottom of the stage, covered with fabric. Danny, let me just update you with the current situation here. From the stage, or behind the stage rather, where the actual pahalik or wiping of the feet of the image of the Black Nazarene happens, the queue goes round the bleachers down to Independence Road, where the lines get divided into two. One for the regular devotees and the other for persons with disabilities, senior citizens, and the pregnant. Both these lines are now very long, Danny, snaking through the South Drive up to the Ross Boulevard. In fact, from 1 a.m. to 5 p.m. this afternoon, the crowd estimate was at least 31,000. But authorities say this is still considerably less than the pre-pandemic years. Still, they estimate this number to grow further as the vigil continues to be capped by the Fiesta Mass to be presided by Manila Archbishop Jose Cardinal Advincula. Danny.
Thank you for those updates, Mon Gualvez.
But hindi natin pwede tapusin tong show without talking about this. Our big picture tonight is on the Golden Globes that happened earlier today, Manila time. We're not going to be talking about the winners, though. It is the awards show host, Filipino-American stand-up comedian Jokoy. After initially making history as the first Fil-Am host for the Golden Globes, Jokoy failed to stick his landing after what many described as terrible hosting, to say the least. Rolling Stone magazine wrote that Golden Globes host Jokoy booed during monologue and blames writers. The piece did acknowledge, though, how the comedian was a last-minute choice for the gig. USA Today also highlighted how Jokoy went off-script to defend his jokes from the tough crowd. Upon realizing that he was not selling it, Jokoy claimed that he only got the gig 10 days ago. Newsweek also took a shot at his joke about Taylor Swift that backfired. Clips of the pop star sipping her drink with a cold stare, o yung tinatawag nga ng producer natin si Aryan, death stare, after that NFL joke. have now gone viral. Here in the Philippines, Jokoy is trending for all the wrong reasons, with many claiming secondhand embarrassment for the comedian and half disowning him kasi half Filipino daw
Pinoy
siya.
lang daw.
Bakit tayo ganon?
Nakakahiya.
Yung post ko kanina
Walang
about
support.
this gig,
May nag-send nga sa akin ng post mo.
medyo nagtitrend na. Kasi sinabi ko kasi, no, what I said on Twitter or X, sabi ko, hosts are always responsible for their script.
no?
Whether it's you
It wasn't
who
funny.
writes
Yeah.
it or not, whatever you say on cam
Yeah.
is yours.
Alam
They
natin
are your
yan,
words.
di ba?
Alam natin yan, no?
That's our
Para
last
kumbaga,
touch.
may magsulat man, kung binasa natin, sa atin pa rin babalik yun. So I guess, I was referring to him saying na I did not write this. Kumbaga parang para sa iba.
nilaglag niya kasi yung
Para
mga
sa iba,
writers
nilaglag niya.
Dapat diniscuss niya muna before
And he did it in the middle of the show.
Yeah, yeah.
So parang, kumbaga parang accountability
Sobrang
there
palusot,
was
parang
lacking,
ganon.
right? Tinanggap mo 10 days yung gig, di ba? Parang yun din yung challenge doon.
To be fair, no?
There was great pressure on him. There was great pressure on him, right?
Ang hirap.
10 days, it is difficult because
And we don't know whether they forced him to
no,
say
getting
these
into a
things.
scene like that, you have to know the dynamics
Yeah.
because these are stars in the room. You have to be able to communicate with them in a way that does not offend, and we know how sensitive Hollywood is coming after a writer's strike and an actor's strike.
Yeah. Also, no, I think this event, apart from the writer's strike, so natigil nga siya, iba na rin yung nag-handle sa kanya for the first time. Tapos bago pa yung host. First time rin ni Jokoy mag-host ng ganito. At bukod pa doon, I think his forte, as we all know it, is like a racial stereotype
Making
joke.
fun of
Yun.
himself.
Diba?
naman.
Making fun of
Oo.
himself using a Tagalog accent. Joseph, Skyflakes, ganyan. So I don't know
Hindi
kung magta-translate. Medyo mahirap rin naman talaga.
Well,
But
he-
Gretchen's right. He
Oo.
took the job.
Yeah.
So,
And 10 days?
He is actually
should
the
have still done
second
what he
person to
could.
do this of Asian descent. The first one was Sandra Oh in 2019. So I guess that's why the pressure was tremendous for him to represent us. Whether yung iba naman kasi nag-argue for him, saying na kahit pa paano, I mean, sometimes we
May
flop.
representation,
Sometimes we
yes.
don't really do well. But the thing is, he still had that experience in the bag. Yun naman ang argument ng mga nagde-defend kay Jokoy online.
anyway, it's just the
Part
first
of
time,
the
right?
job. Yeah, part of the job. Diba?
Pero medyo sa totoo lang, I have to
Hirap
admit,
lang.
medyo
Kawawa
masakit.
lang. Oo.
Masakit.
Hindi,
Kasi
kasi
we were
kahit-
also excited
Kahit
about
anong
it.
sabihin mo, I mean, even if I
We wanted to be
posted...
proud,
Yeah, we wanted to
We
be
wanted
proud.
to be
He is still
proud.
one of our own, even if some people have disowned him.
Right,
Wag na
okay,
lang
we're gonna
muna.
have to leave it on that thought.
Kawawa naman.
Long
Kawawa.
discussions.
I'm sure he'll find a way to hopefully redeem himself.
Okay, baka naman bumawi si
No,
Jokoy.
alam mo,
naman.
sana,
Dito na lang
ang
siya
dasal ko,
mag-shoot.
sana mas Steve Harvey siya. Yung, kumbaga, he bounces back big time and diba,
Yeah.
uses this as a platform
See,
to do
comebacks.
that.
Comebacks are a thing. All right, kakawagay ni Marie. Ito na. That's it for the show tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in and have a good night.